Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of Cinemaholics. This is another one of our last call episodes. Now, if you've never listened to a last call is when the three of us get together to review a film or talk about something that we didn't have time to talk about on the main show. And this week, that is a film that we were really excited to talk about, but just couldn't fit it into the main show because of scheduling problems, and that's Bad Times at the Royale. But first, of course, I am your host, as always, John Negroni from the Internet, California. And with me, I have our resident film critic, Will Ashton.
Hello.
And across from me, our sound producer and sound master, Maverick Hines.
Hey.
We're just talking about one film this week, Gentlemen, and afterward, hopefully we can do a spoiler section. It feels kind of like we can just sort of do that because we don't have to worry about mini reviews or any other extra content. So let's dive right into it. We're talking about Bad Times at the Royale, which is from writer and director Drew Goddard, probably best known for Cabin in the Woods. He also worked on the Daredevil show. And you remind me, Will Ashton, what are some things people might know Drew Goddard best for?
Didn't he get an Oscar nom for writing The Martian?
Yeah, I think he might have. That's, of course, the Ridley Scott directed film.
Yeah, he almost directed that film. But I think he dropped out to do Daredevil, which he also dropped out of like halfway through the first season or something like that. So,
Well, Ashton, did you not appreciate my talking about your Daredevil dislike of that show on this week's
I'm not really a
Cinemaholics?
fan, but yeah, I realized after I posted that was kind of a jerk thing to do, so I apologize.
No, Will Ashton, we like it when you bring on the hot takes, and especially when they involve Daredevil, yeah.
Season 3's coming out soon.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't wait to watch it with you, Will. Yeah. Episode by episode.
I can't wait to not watch it. Actually, I think the main reason I started to watch it because I wanted to get to the Punisher stuff. And I just got so bored with the show that I didn't finish it.
Well, you ended up watching Punisher anyway, didn't you?
I never got to it, no.
See, I think you can just watch Punisher without watching the Daredevil content.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is self-contained, and you know, you don't get all of the backstory, but they do a good job of showing, not telling, some of the exposition in that first season of Punisher. I don't know if it would be successful.
Can I just start season 2 without finishing season 1 to watch the Punisher stuff and then quit when he's done being in the show?
I mean, you can do anything
absolutely
you want,
do that, actually.
But should you is the question.
Well, if you don't like the show, you don't like the show. But anyway, we're here to talk about Bad Times at the Royale, which does sort of feel like the movie that Drew Goddard was able to make because he's had so much screenwriting success with a lot of cult films. Cabin in the Woods is a twisty turner, this place isn't what it seems kind of movie. And it, over the years, has built a huge fan base. I'm definitely included in the film's really big fans. That is, if you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, that is just a wonderful time. Grab some friends. Don't get spoiled by it, and definitely check it out. And even if you do know the twist, it's still a fun ride. But this new film, Bad Times at the Royale, is a little different, except with the part where it is sort of a location kind of movie where things aren't all what they seem. The film stars Jeff Bridges, Cynthia Erivo, Dakota Johnson, Jon Hamm, Kylie Spenny, Lewis Pullman, Nick Offerman, and Chris Hemsworth. And this is one film that I know we've been all anticipating quite a bit. I believe this was on one of your most anticipated of the fall, Maverick.
Yeah, it was on my list.
Do you want to go first?
No, I went first for the main review. Let's let Will go first.
Okay, put him on the spot. Will Ashton, please do the honors.
Yeah, so I mean, even though we were dismissing Drew Goddard earlier, I actually am quite a big fan of his stuff. I mean, obviously, I think...
To be clear, you were dismissing Drew Goddard earlier.
I apologize. I don't know. It was just me. You're a big fan of the show. Maverick's a big fan of shows. Fair enough. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. I mean, I would say probably his finest hour is the Cabin in the Woods, as we mentioned earlier, because I think that is just a fine example of like a really good surprise film. Because that was a film like I remember when it was coming out. Like I think it was delayed for like 2 or 3 years, and it was like just one of those movies that was like on the calendar for a while, and you can kind of tell because Chris Hemsworth's in it. He looks really young in it because they shot it before he was Thor. Mm-hmm. So you can just kind of tell that like it was shot a while ago. I think it was like 2009, and then it came out in 2012. And so I just remember, I mean, the only thing that was really like getting people interested in was that it was co-written by Joss Whedon. I think he produced it as well. And so like it was just one of those movies that like no one really knew anything about going in because there was a big mystery around it. And then when you saw it, it was like, oh, this is a really clever deconstruction of the horror genre, and it justifiably earned its fan base because I think there's so much in that movie to appreciate, including one scene that I think might be like the most fun I've had in the movie theaters ever. I mean, if you know what it is, I cannot give it away because I think it would be a true tragedy to know what that is beforehand. But
absolutely,
as it stands. But I had a lot more expectations going to Bad Times at the El Royale than I did for Cabin in the Woods, and I'm wondering if that kind of bit me in the end because this movie, I guess I was kind of expecting to be as twisty and genre bending as Cabin in the Woods, and I think in a way that's intentional. Like I think the way that Drew Goddard structures the film, it's kind of the comparisons to Cabin in the Woods seem kind of apparent. I don't know if we're going to do a spoiler section, so I can say what exactly I'm referring to. But in a way,
I actually haven't seen the Cabin in the Woods yet.
No, I was talking about with this
for
movie.
Bad Times. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, no, don't give away anything away.
Definitely.
No,
not
I mean, I wasn't
away.
going to give anything for Cabin in the Woods away, but I was going to.
No worries. Just check.
Talk about. Yeah. So. Anyway, yeah, so there's a point where the movie kind of implies that it's going in a similar direction as Cabin in the Woods, and then it's like, no, it's actually going to be more of like a riff on Tarantino films. Even the title seems to suggest as much, with El Royale being a big thing from Pulp Fiction, and Pulp Fiction and
The Hateful Eight. Bad Times at the El Royale with cheese.
Yeah, there you go. And I mean, that's the way the movie is constructed. Even the what do you call it? What's the term? I'm blanking on what it's supposed to be.
Flashbacks or the chapters?
No, MacGuffin. I meant MacGuffin. The MacGuffin of the film.
Yeah, where it doesn't really matter what the MacGuffin is, but
but like the way that they frame it and stuff, like it's pretty similar to the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. And so, I mean, combined with that, like Reservoir Dogs and The Hateful Eight, there's a lot of comparisons you can make to this film and Tarantino films. And it kind of reminded me of like when the '90s, when there was like a lot of knockoffs of Tarantino. I think it's a little better than those, but it kind of reminded me in some ways of like Seven Psychopaths, where it's like a good way, like it's like a good imitation of his films, but I think you could see more limitations in this film than you could in his first film. And that's kind of typical of sophomore films as directors are concerned, but there's a lot of this movie I liked and a lot that I found myself disappointed by, particularly in how the film kind of indulges itself past the 2.5 hour mark, which is something I find myself... I kind of appreciate that it is such a filmmaker-driven film, but at the same time, I just kind of wish it was a little more clever than it ultimately was, which is not something I expected to say going in, but it just kind of left... I was entertained for the most part. It does drag at times, but at the same time, I just kind of wish there was something a little more to it. And I'm curious to hear if you guys are feeling the same way.
Yeah, it definitely is way more straightforward than I was expecting. I don't know if I was expecting like big Cabin in the Woods twists. I didn't really have an expectation going in of like, this is definitely going to be like crazy and groundbreaking, but for like a different genre. But I did sort of wonder, I was like, man, the mysteries here must be holy smokes. And ultimately, yeah, you're kind of right. They just sort of happen matter-of-factly, and we'll get into it though, because I think that I have some straying thoughts compared to you. Let's set up this film a little bit, because we haven't really explained like what is the story here.
Yeah, well, what can we give away exactly? That's
I think we can give away the first part of it, not the cold open though. It's set in the very late 60s, I believe 1969, and a group of strangers show up to this hotel that's kind of seen better days. It used to be hustling and bustling, the El Royale. And it's kind of a gimmicky hotel in the sense that it is right on the state line between Nevada and California. So half of the hotel is in California. The rooms cost a different amount. And then the other half of the hotel is Nevada. Yeah. And the hotel scene,
and I love that set piece. I think that set piece is fantastic.
It's interesting. It's fun. It's a clever... There is some cleverness to that. And I agree with you, though, where the movie doesn't end up being quite as clever as I think it's setting itself up to be in the first 20, 30 minutes. But I think the way the characters sort of collide, introduce themselves to each other, interact, and then eventually they go to their rooms early on is... that's where you get a lot of the Hateful Eight. That's where you get a lot of... Okay, clearly there's a lot going on here, and I can't wait to see how all of these different stories unfold, and that's certainly all I want to give away. Huh?
Yeah, I guess Four Rooms is another one. I guess you can... I don't know if that's completely Tarantino, but has kind of some ideas since they're both like hotels in some way.
obviously Goddard's being really overt with this movie here. The characters are showing up with their baggage. All of the symbolism is pretty easy to see, but it basically works. Maverick Hines, what did you think of the movie overall? How do you agree with what Will's saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think before I say anything, I have to make sure I state that I did like this movie. Like, I think I had a good time watching it, and I don't think it was bad. I feel like everything I usually end up reviewing sounds more negative than I want it to. So I'm just like, yes, I did like this. Now let me say things I didn't like.
Yeah, should we answer this right now? Did we all have a good time at the bad times at El Royale? I did. I had a good time.
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, and as you guys know, The Hateful Eight is probably one of my favorite movies I've seen in a very long time. Like, I think it's on my all-time list.
Cheers to that.
It's up there. I really, really enjoyed that movie. So obviously it was,
Save something for DeWitt.
I was going to draw a lot of comparisons, right? I knew that from the trailer. And I will say that though I like this movie and I could appreciate, kind of the homage paid to Hateful Eight, I felt like this one suffered a little bit from the fact that it was trying so hard to be like it. And one of my big things was what makes the Hateful Eight so great, and I won't spoil too much because of our other conversation we're going to have, is that the Hateful Eight's kind of like, I feel like all the characters have a similar story. They're connected a lot more. And I think this movie suffers from the fact that the people here aren't as connected. They don't know each other as much.
A lot of coincidence going on.
Yeah, and it's just a little too much for me to be like, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And a lot of the tension that arises and stuff like that because of the interactions that they have throughout this journey were harder for me to be sold on due to the fact that they really didn't know each other before coming into this hotel. And I hope I'm not giving away too much too soon there, but that was just the big thing that stuck out to me a lot, was that it just didn't... I just wasn't sold as often. And I'll go over some more of that stuff in trailers with Chris Hemsworth character, because I think that's where one of my biggest complaints comes from.
Chris Hemsworth is not good in this film. I feel pretty confident saying that. I think he was horribly miscast.
Really?
I widely disagree.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this.
Yeah, as I say, I think he did well with his character. I just didn't like I don't think the character.
I have no disrespect for Chris whatsoever.
Yeah, was necessary or really made sense for that portion of the film. But I'm assuming that'll be a big conversation for us in a few minutes. But long story short, I really enjoyed it. I thought that for the most part, people did really well with their performances. Everyone seemed to do pretty decently. I didn't no one was unbelievable for me in that regards. Apparently you feel very differently about Hemsworth, but and I love Jeff Bridges. I thought he did really well as well.
Yeah, I'll say real quick, it is kind of interesting. The Tarantino comparisons are just really in your face with this film. They're really hard to deny, the way that it's not just the location of it. Like, Will, you really covered it. The Hateful Eight, we're all in the same place kind of thing. The flashbacks of Pulp Fiction, obviously the briefcase. And if there's one thing this movie does, it kind of shines a light on how good Tarantino is with most of his films, I would say, because this one, I think, suffers from the fact that it doesn't have the just endlessly riveting dialogue that Tarantino inserts into these kinds of films. Yeah. And it's a shame because Goddard, he's working with, I forget his cinematographer. I think it's Seamus McGarvey, but my goodness, this movie is beautiful. It's more beautiful than a couple of Tarantino films. I would say that it has the right look. It has the right vibe. Yeah. I'd say most of the actors here are great. I'd say that a lot of the dialogue and scenes between Jeff Bridges and Cynthia Erivo are just spot on. Mm-hmm. But I do think that the screenplay isn't quite there. But sorry, you were going to say, Will. Oh,
no, I was just going to add to your point about cinematography. It's also shot quite beautifully on 35mm film. And if you get a chance to see it projected on film or at least in theaters, I think it's well worth seeing despite our criticisms.
We saw it in the standard, and I wish we could have seen this in Dolby. At least I saw it in standard. I don't know if
I saw it in standard as well.
Yeah, I think that some of the contrasting shots with the neon, with there's a thunderstorm. You really there's texture to this film. It's gorgeous to look at. That's one thing it's got going for it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely, I don't have the same complaint that it drags or it feels too long or anything like that. I was good with the length. I was overall, on balance, okay with the third act. We'll talk about it. I think the Chris Hemsworth character, it's very interesting because Tarantino's right now is working on a film about Charles Manson, and Hemsworth very overtly is kind of like working off of like a kind kind of the Manson thing. And so it is kind of interesting that, Tarantino and Goddard are apparently like, roommates and kind of swapping notes or something. That's probably giving way too much credit to Goddard. I don't know. But all that said, I do enjoy some of the little messages that this movie has to say. They're not groundbreaking, they're not fascinating, but there are some overtones here, and I don't want to call them undertones of, that this is a movie with some kind of message that did affect me in a little bit of a way. So overall, I was a net positive on this. I just kind of have to knock it down a bit for being kind of derivative, and I really resonate with Will's criticism that it's just not as clever as it's presenting itself to be. And there were a lot of moments that were just sort of strangely straightforward when they could have been a bit more surprising and a bit more unconventional. And I think it would have benefited from a little bit more weird. This whole subplot, that's in the trailers where the characters are, walking through. I don't know if it's a one tracking shot, but it's a good tracking shot that probably has a few different cuts where, they're observing the rooms kind of secretly. And on paper, this really works. It's creepy, it's surreal, the music is blaring, but overall, you don't take anything away from it. And it is sort of something that's mystified with like the Pulp Fiction veneer in a way that I don't think kind of works in this case for some reason. And it might take maybe one day somebody's going to read something into this film. Maybe Drew Goddard's going to what you were saying, Maverick, on Sunday about, maybe he's going to say in some interview, well, this was the secret. This is why this, and this happened. And maybe it'll all crystallize someday. But I think on first viewing, I can see why some people kind of hate this film, or lots of people are just okay with it, had a good time, but aren't necessarily rushing out to recommend it and boost it on word of mouth. So
I would say that one more thing I wanted to add that I forgot to. I agree with Will on the length. It felt a little long for me. I think I forgot to bring that up. But also, and I'll try to say this without giving too much away now before we get into spoilers. But there's one of the characters. Is it Darlene Sweet? Is that her character's name? What's the actress's name?
Cynthia Erivo.
She's a fantastic singer, and that's kind of a point in this movie is about her singing. But I felt like so many times that her singing was lingered on for like a really, really long time. And I know that it served some purposes for those scenes, but even still, when it was necessary, it was so long that we were listening to those moments that like I was very much over it by like the third time it had happened. I just couldn't handle hearing her sing. And again, it's not about her voice or her talent. It was just the setting in which they were going. I was going crazy listening to it.
I think it was really effective in the second scene. I can't give in too much specifics, but there's like a very tense moment involving her singing that I thought the way it's drawn out is actually really effective. And I think that might be, as far as the directing is concerned, the best made scene in the film. I thought the way it was edited, the way it was shot, the way it was directed, I thought that scene was fantastic.
And I think that scene would have carried more weight for me. I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, that's basically what I was going to say.
Okay, yeah. I think that scene would have carried more weight for me and been better if we hadn't already had like a 5-minute scene of just her singing like 20 minutes before that. And if it didn't happen again like 30 minutes later. You know what I mean?
Again, though, the song is You Can't Hurry Love, and it's just so in your face. I honestly think the best scene in this film is closer to the midway point. There's a scene between her and Jeff Bridges where they're starting to get to know each other.
Yeah,
it is
that was my
very
favorite part of the movie.
Methodical scene, and it ends with a wonderful moment that took my theater's breath away. And that was when I was with the film the most. But unfortunately, I do think it's kind of the highest moment. And then from there, it all just sort of, it doesn't dive. There's not a downturn. It just sort of, it just sort of flattens from then on out, which was a little bit disappointing. But I do really want to pick that scene out in particular as something kind of special in this film.
I liked it a lot as well.
I agree with you. I think it's like more that the film is like the sum of its parts, if I'm using that expression right. Like it's like all these like, there are like a handful of really, really good scenes. I just don't think they really come together as much as they should have. Like in the way they connect with each other wasn't quite as effective as I think the movie could have been.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because I think, like you said, like those moments are very good. And I think that scene you're talking about is probably the best written scene in the film. Certainly the way it's constructed from a narrative standpoint. But it's just those scenes that I think if there's more connective tissue that made them resonate as much as they do like in Hateful Eight, then I think this could have been a really, really solid film on par with some of the Tarantino films we're talking about, or even Cabin in the Woods. So That's kind of my disappointment, I think.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I would probably isolate a few characters here. I think we can all agree Jeff Bridges and Cynthia Erivo, they're the ones that the movie probably cares the most about. It does strike me in Hateful Eight. It's a little bit like how Walter Goggins and Samuel Jackson end up sort of being the heart of the film.
Yeah.
And this one, we do have some outliers. We have Dakota Johnson sort of plays this mysterious kind of aggressive hippie character who we don't know a lot about, who gets some interesting turns in the film, but ultimately doesn't quite work for me in some of the same ways as Chris Hemsworth. You were going to say?
Well, I think her character is the weakest link as far as the writing is concerned.
I would say so too. There's a very strange limp agency to her. And there's something interesting going on with a character who shows up sort of connected to her, played by Kylie Spenny. We remember her from Pacific Rim Uprising. And there's something to her character that, again, this is another on paper kind of moment. There's another character who plays the kind of the battered. Lewis Pullman plays the only employee at this hotel who gets some interesting moments, but ultimately gets something that I don't know if you can call it a Deus Ex Machina, but it does feel like something that someone in working on the screenplay or maybe editing it was like, we need to fix this, and it feels inserted almost at the last moment, which definitely. Maybe we can get to that more in spoilers. But yeah, those are definitely some of the outliers. But Will, I guess we'll talk more about it in spoilers. But but what about Jon Hamm as well? I mean, where do you stand on all of the ensemble, I guess, as a whole?
Well, Jon Hamm, so he does something at the beginning of this movie that was like, okay, that's kind of an odd choice. And then like they dropped that, and it's like, okay, I kind of figured that was the case since it seemed kind of over the top. And then I don't know, I thought he was fine. Like he wasn't bad, but I was, I guess, expecting more from him as an actor, just because I know he can do more, especially in the 50s or 60s.
I enjoy how much he was hamming it up though in those early scenes.
How dare you?
Oh, you and your
this episode's canceled.
So let's see. As far as the actors we haven't talked about yet, is there anyone else we haven't really talked about yet that we can't say
there's
Nick
Offerman.
without talking about spoilers?
Nick Offerman gets a very...
Can we talk about him?
Let's wait till spoilers. Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
Sure.
I was gonna say,
there's not much
I don't
to
know
give
who
away,
else we can really talk. I don't know who else we can really talk about that wouldn't be like diving into spoilers at this point. So
sure, let's wrap it up with our final thoughts then, and devote the rest of this. I think people kind of get it. Okay, I'll go first. Bad Times at the El Royale, ultimately, I think, is a decent time at the El Royale. I liked it more than I disliked it, and it is one of those films I'll absolutely revisit again. And I think that it has the potential to be a very wonderful cult film. I think that it kind of suffers under the weight of expectations a bit. If this had come out maybe with a somewhat less recognizable cast, if this had been Drew Goddard's first film, I think that we would sort of be saying, hey, this was pretty good. Like, I wasn't sort of expecting it to be as good as it was. Unfortunately, it has so much working against it in terms of, the Tarantino influences being a little distracting, in terms of some of these actors. In my opinion, I think specifically with Hemsworth being cast against type and to the film's detriment, unfortunately. I think it's a movie with a lot of style, with just enough substance to get by, but you really wish it was the whole package. I mean, it's the kind of film it's got to be either like A or B, basically. There's not too much wiggle room, in my opinion, at least for me. So I give it a solid B. Go check it out if you're interested by the trailer. You'll probably have a good time. What about you, Maverick?
I don't know that I have much else to add. Like I said, I did have a good time with this, and I enjoyed the movie. But it's definitely not, on my top list for the year or anything like that. It's not. Yeah, it's not much to it. And I think I'm probably a little bit more critical on the movie because of my expectations due to the fact of how much I love The Hateful Eight. So I have to try and be a little lenient with that because I was holding it to a pretty high standard in comparison, I think. But regardless of all that, I'm right in line with you, John. It's a B for me as well.
All right. Well, Ashton, close us out.
A+.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, I think expectations are kind of what kill it in some respects. Like you said, I mean, maybe if my expectations for the film were a little more moderate, then I would have had more positive things to say, but I think just knowing what Goddard can do and having seen as many Tarantino films as we have, I think that's ultimately kind of a detriment to the film, knowing that it is fairly derivative, as you said, John, and ultimately not quite as clever or witty or smart as I think we would expect a film from these talented people to be. But I don't know. I've heard some people say that it's not that, like, it's like a surface level film, and I don't really agree with that. I don't think it's that deep, but it's fairly, like, it has some things to say, like you said, John, and I wouldn't dismiss it as such, but ultimately, I mean, if you're looking for something that's like fairly enjoyable, if a little overlong and a little self-indulgent, then I think you'll get a pretty good film out of this. I just kind of wish it was a little stronger. I was between a B and a B minus myself. I'm gonna give it a high B minus just because maybe if I see it again, I'll like it a little more, knowing what to expect. But as it stands, I did find myself a little disappointed at the end, and that's something I just wasn't expecting. So I think that dampened my enthusiasm for the film a little bit.
All right, well, that's a high B minus, which makes us about a B average, which is good. Pretty good rating for definitely a film of this genre. They definitely can be definitely much on the lower side. So let's get into spoilers, though. Let's if you have not watched Bad Times at the El Royale and you are planning on it and you don't want to hear any spoilers, please turn away now. Check out our main show, and you can listen to our First Man review if you haven't already, along with some of our other reviews that we did, Hold the Dark and all those other things. But for now, let's talk about this one. We didn't get into the specific length. My goodness, 141 minutes, and it's a low-budget film. It's not going to be a big failure. It's made about $11 million at the box office this past opening weekend, which is about half the budget.
What's low budget? Like what?
The budget is reportedly $32 million. So
okay,
it's probably it's not going to be a hit, but it's probably going to break even.
Yeah, that's more of a mid-budget film, I guess. But
right.
I heard the stars they took quite a few cuts in their budgets or cuts in their paychecks to make sure that the film could be a reasonable budget. So that makes sense.
Right. And this doesn't seem like a film that's going to get a ton of space like overseas, unfortunately for the studio. But it is one of those things. I've seen a lot of stories, and they really resonate with me that, you know, we have this original film, Bad Times at the El Royale. We have the original, you know, film. Well, what was the one that came out last week? See, I'm already forgetting it. Basically, if you look at some of like the original films that have been coming out lately, Venom is doing better than everything.
Are you talking about A Star Is Born?
Star Is Born. No, that's a remake. So I'm thinking more.
I was going to say, yeah.
There have been a lot of original like films though that have come out this year that just don't do a lot of budget. And people always say like, oh, Hollywood never makes anything original anymore. And then you look at the box office for Venom, and it's like, yeah, of course. Because Venom, you know, these superhero movies, they can be terrible. They can get like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, and people still show up for them.
Yeah, this movie, especially because it's a Fox film, it feels like the last of its kind in some ways. And I hope it's not, but just to have a film like this, like an adult-oriented mystery film that's, you know, like it's a filmmaker-driven film, shot on film, kind of harkening back to an older type of film that came from like the 70s to the 90s. It just feels like it's kind of a shame that we're probably not going to get a lot of these films anymore, just because not a lot of people show up, and also because Disney bought Fox and they're looking at me not making that many adult films reportedly. So yeah, it's that's why I think I'm also a little disappointed that the film wasn't better, because like knowing this is a last hurrah in some extent, I really wanted this movie to be great, and the fact that it wasn't kind of bummed me out.
We're really belaboring the spoiler stuff, but I do hope that after acquiring Fox, Disney sort of creates a new studio, like a rebranded Fox that does focus on films like this, like on things that are a bit of have more of an edge, that are under the Disney brand but aren't Touchstone. You know what I mean? They're not Buena Vista. They're actually like there's going to be hopefully like a new thing with maybe a new direction for what Fox was trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, if they are going to do adult stuff, they're just going to make it Hulu exclusives. Ooh. So they wouldn't get theatrical releases.
Ooh. Which is rough. Yeah, Minding the Gap, though, I mean,
that's why
has done fairly successful as a Hulu exclusive. So I think I know, Will, one of the hills you die on is the fact that films like Bad Times at the El Royale are becoming an nearly extinct breed in terms of coming out in theaters, and I agree with you 100%. It's very unfortunate. But as far as the critics go, I mean, Bad Times is doing. It has pretty decent numbers. It has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 160 reviews. The average rating is pretty low, 6.5 out of 10, which is about right for that score. So most critics are liking it. It's just it doesn't seem like a lot of critics are outright loving it. Well, let's dive into. I mean, I want to put out the big reason why the big thing that really holds me back from liking this film is I do think Chris Hemsworth is just. It's just an atrocious performance, and it's so unfortunate because it's not the man's fault. It's just so impossible to buy this guy as a Charles Manson type. It's the eyes. It's those eyes. Like, how do you look into the eyes of Chris Hemsworth and believe that it's not the early stuff. The early stuff where he's like sort of the leader of this cult, where he sort of has this affect, this sentimentality, that stuff works great. I really buy that version of it. But when he takes the turn as the film's villain, when he starts to antagonize the main characters, that's when it just falls apart. I was completely removed from the film because it is not a believable performance. It's just not a good one. I don't think Chris's range is there, and he has to do something very challenging here. And in my opinion, it's not up to snuff. But Will, I think you disagree.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. Yeah, well, if we're going with the Manson thing, I mean, the main thing about Manson was, I mean, this is going to be a weird turn, but the weird thing about Manson is that, like, he was just very charismatic. Like, the reason why people were so drawn to doing the terrible things they did with him was that they really believed in his things through that charisma. And I think that's what Chris Hemsworth achieves, that you have that charisma, you have that, like, I get that it's a movie, so it's like, I get that he's going to look like Chris Hemsworth. Like, I don't really get this criticism that you're saying where he's not believable. Like, the movie isn't believable already.
The early parts where he is charismatic are believable enough. And sure, the film has an absurdity to it. I'm talking about the specific scenes where he is killing people, where he is starting to get a little shaken, where he's starting to become the villain. And I think that is a very tricky balance to go from charismatic to menacing in a believable way where you believe it's the same character doing the same performance. I just don't think it's there.
I mean, the whole thing with his character, now we're in spoilers, we can say this, it's about his fragile ego. That he has to trout his masculinity in order to feel that he is important. And that's something that, what's her name? The singer character. I apologize, I can't think of her name or character's name.
Played by Cynthia Erivo.
She sees right through him. She's the only character that can see, well...
I love that moment where she says it to his face. It's a great piece of dialogue.
And I think that's the thing, is that, like, she's the only person who's ever really called him out on who he is. And, like, in that way, he feels, like, challenged and affected by that. But, like, I think, to me, that scene worked because it's him testing his, like, macho masculinity. He wants to feel, like, validated, and he wants to feel like he is important and sexy and all these different things. And I think it really worked for Chris Hemsworth. I thought my main takeaway from that performance is that, like, he is ultimately, I think, a character actor who is cursed with a sexy leading man's body. Like, I think...
And I don't say that wholeheartedly.
Can we tweet that, please?
Yeah. No, but I mean, like, when I see stuff like this, or like Ghostbusters, which I don't think Ghostbusters is a great film, but I think he's pretty good in that. Or even the last Thor movie. Or even the last Thor movie, like, where he's fairly funny and charismatic. Like, it's apparent that, like, he is better when he kind of plays, like, off himself, or, like, kind of plays against his physicality and stuff like that. And I think that is apparent in this film, and I think that was a really great showcase for him, and that he's better when he's not playing the rigid, like, male type. That's the thing that, like, I've noticed a lot with his, like, leading man roles, like Black Hat, or, I don't know, In the Heart of the Sea, where he's just kind of, like, the straightforward, like, whatever Tom Cruise type leading man. That's not really what plays to his strengths. I think this role really did play to his strengths, and I'm disappointed that you didn't agree with that.
See, I only agree with half of it, I guess. And I just can't get on that same page with the other half of the performance, where he does have to sort of be a little bit more straightforward because Darlene Sweet rattles him a bit. And I think that's where the character kind of fails. But just my opinion. Maverick Hines, I mean, do you have a stance on this? Do you want to...
Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit more in Will's camp on this one. I wasn't, you said you were completely thrown off and, kind of taken out of the movie with his performance. I wasn't there. I wasn't 100% sold on it, but I think that was more because I didn't really care about that character. This whole cult thing, I don't know why. It never had an impact on me in this movie. I never really gave a crap about it. And by the time it gets to that point in the movie, I was already kind of like, what's happening? Like, you know what I mean? So I was never really invested in in that threat. So I think that's where I kind of got disconnected from him, but I thought he did okay with the performance. I just don't think the character was very great.
Interesting. So kind of a different take.
Yeah.
Let's talk about then Lewis Pullman. I forget his name in the film. He's the
Miles.
Miles. Thank you. I wonder if there's any symbolism to that. But yeah, he's the kind of the junkie.
Life is a highway.
Oh my goodness. Miles from Civilization. So Miles has a bit of a kind of a twist later on. You find out part of the reason he's a junkie in the first place, part of the reason, he keeps his mouth shut. He apparently has had a very traumatic experience in Korea. Interesting. What did you make of that, Will? I mean, kind of the way that all of that sort of thing develops, because I found it to be very Deus Ex Machina, just to sort of be thrown out of nowhere so he can have a way to kill off the bad guys.
Well, as far as the character is concerned, it surprised me because I was not expecting him to be in the movie as much as he was. Mm-hmm. Because I think there was some part of like film Twitter or something that was like saying like, well, why didn't they just cast like Tom Holland to do this? Like he looks a lot like Tom Holland. Like it would have been like the same deal. And I felt like if they cast a celebrity in that role, then it would have been too glaring that like, oh, he's going to be a main character later. I thought it was really effective how Drew Goddard like cast like this actor who personally I don't really know. I mean, maybe he's been in a lot of stuff and I just haven't seen
He's
it.
He's a relative unknown, Lewis Pullman.
That's what I mean. Like so, like especially like all these like major A or to B list celebrities. I kind of figured like he would be axed out of the film earlier, and the fact that he is in it a fairly prominent amount was fairly surprising to me. To the point where like that one scene when Chris Hemsworth is kind of playing what do you call that game? Like where he was like shooting all the people, like you kind of figured, oh, he's gonna shoot Miles because he's not the celebrity, and then he shoots Dakota Fanning. And that was one of the few surprises I found pretty genuinely surprising in the films, because like, oh, okay, so he's actually gonna stay in this for the long haul. But as far as what you're talking about though, with the Deus Ex Machina moment, I felt that was kind of a lazy thing to do from a screenwriting standpoint.
Right.
Like, I get why they approached it the way they did, but it definitely felt like a film school writing type of thing where it's just like, oh yeah, here's this like thing we didn't establish earlier in the film, but it's supposed to be a twist. But it just felt kind of like that felt like just kind of like weak screenwriting. And that's not to say that Drew Goddard's a bad writer, but that just felt like a poor screenwriting decision.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm conflicted because there's something to it. There's something to the relationship he has with the priest, wanting to confess, and then revealing that there's something deeper behind it. That stuff makes sense to me. Yeah.
And I thought that him dying on the line, like that, like. Trying to find salvation and damnation. That was pretty compelling from a cinematic standpoint. And I was surprised that that's one of the few times they actually really play with the line barrier, because that was one of the things when the movie started off, I was expecting them to do more with that. And maybe they did, and I just wasn't really paying too much attention.
They kind of play it up when she's at the jukebox, because she leaves her shoes there. She has like 1 foot in Nevada, 1 foot in California. There are a few fun little visual tricks they do with it.
But I expected more from that, I guess.
Especially like, I think to your point, I expected more personally as well, playing it into the themes of the movie, and it felt more like a gimmick in parts than anything else. It is kind of interesting that I believe none of them stay in California. And I was kind of racking my brain to sort of figure out, like, it felt like it was a convenience of that hallway and less why are they all over here? Oh, because it costs more in California. And it just feels like there's something sort of missing from what I wonder what Goddard is trying to say with that distinction. And maybe I'm missing
if we're going with the Manson thing, that's very California type of thing. So I guess like there's some like temptation and evil on that side. And then I guess these are all kind of morally gray characters for the most part.
I did appreciate, this is a movie about, it does kind of ask some questions about what does it take, how desperate does someone have to be to commit a crime? And you do see a lot of different characters who are who answer that question in different ways. Miles sort of answers that question based around his military experience, his guilt. We see Dakota Johnson. She's willing to commit a crime if it means saving her sister. Her sister is willing to commit a crime if it means she's going to, because she worships this man who basically tells her what to do. And then Jeff Bridges, he's willing to commit a crime to save his friend, the Nick Offerman character. And in other ways, he's willing to do it because he just wants to get his life together. And then the way that he convinces Darlene to do the same sort of thing. I see a consistency there, and I really appreciate the film on that level because it sticks to that question for everyone. With sort of, I guess Jon Hamm is sort of the same thing because he's not supposed to interfere, and he does anyway. But I do think that was one thing that I was a little bummed that they killed him off as early as they did. but I guess it works to serve this film. And real quick, I want to say I looked up Lewis Pullman. I said he's a relative unknown. He's been in a few more things than I recalled. He was in the newer Strangers movie, The Strangers Pray at Night or something like that. He was also in Battle of the Sexes last year. I forgot that he had a role in that. And he was in that Aftermath movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had a very small role in Lean on Pete. Yeah. He's been in a lot of like indie films, basically.
He did look a lot like the lead in Lean on Pete. I don't know if I ever finished that film, but he does look similar to the lead actor. I don't know if he played a role with some kind of variation on that.
Well, he's the son of Bill Pullman.
Oh, really? Like in real life?
Yeah. So, definitely someone who kind of has gotten his start through indie films and kind of proving himself as an actor. And I hope that maybe this will, launch him into some bigger films. This is definitely his biggest one yet, I would say. So, Anyway, all that said. Maverick.
Okay. Yeah, no, just to bring it back to what you guys talking about a second ago with the with Miles's character. Yeah, I wasn't in love with that ending. I don't know. It just seems so weird that he went from like, I don't want to kill any more people to, I'm like a superhero.
Here we
all
go.
Of a sudden.
You're gone. You're gone.
Yeah, and
but
I did like that scene though.
I mean, the scene was fun. Like, you can't deny it. Cool. It's very, had some very wonderful, Tarantino death kind of feel to it, and I appreciated that and whatever. But I don't know, just the fact that like in very short time he was like, I don't want to kill anyone.
No, I agree.
I'm going to kill 30.
Then it's interesting. The reason he dies is because he does show mercy at one point.
Yeah.
He chooses not to kill the girl. And there was something weird about that, because why wouldn't he? Because at that point he would have understood that she was unstable.
Yeah. Also, don't they reveal that she like killed a bunch of people?
Well, she at least killed one person, right?
It was two, because they showed the movie clip or the news clip that she like stabbed like 2 or 3 people at that.
Yeah, okay. You were gonna say what?
I was gonna say a lot of things with his Miles character are kind of weird from like a writing standpoint. Like when he is in the hallway there, and like he just is like standing in front of the window for like a long time just so he can get shot in the face. Like it didn't really feel like natural that he would just be standing there. It just felt like, oh, he has to stand there and like not move just so he can get the bullet, like he can get shot in the face and be like have that half thing again where he's like half wounded and half clean or pure or whatever. But it just, for me, from like a writing standpoint, felt like an odd character decision. But oh well.
Sloppy. So okay, it was definitely JFK on that film though, right?
That's what I was going to ask, because I this is something I really wanted to pose to you guys. I don't mean to cut you off, Will, but being cinesober, I don't often pick up on maybe some of the more obvious subtlety or more obvious things about what the film was trying to tell me. I was like really, really trying hard to be like, okay, who is this? Who are they trying to tell me is on the tape? Like, and maybe it was just lack of historical knowledge, but like I had no idea at the end, and I didn't like.
Well, I think it was trying to say, because we mentioned with like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so the film's not even going to tell you because your imagination is better than what the film will say.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Were there hints that were leading that I was just missing?
Well, because they said that he was probably dead, so it was either JFK or it was Bob Kennedy. It was probably a Kennedy.
Well, here's the thing. So when I was watching the film, at first I was thinking it was kind of Nixon, but then they said that he was dead. So I was like, okay, so it's JFK.
Nixon was the only guess I had, but then when they said he was dead.
Because they kept showing Nixon on TV. And
exactly.
When they said that he was dead, I was like, okay, so it's probably JFK, but I was pulling a Maverick and reading about the film afterwards.
Yeah.
And on Reddit, they were talking about this, and they were saying that so Miles mentions that he met him like a year ago, and this is 1969. So that implies
it's probably Bobby Kennedy.
So it was probably he died in 1968. So that means it's probably either
Martin Luther King.
It was either Bob Kennedy or Martin Luther King.
Which I doubt was Martin Luther King, because did he go to California, Nevada much?
I don't know, but I was going to say...
Because in the late 60s, he was spending most of his time in like the northern states.
So it's suggested that Jon Hamm is working with the government to try to find the tape.
Right.
So he can destroy it. So that would imply that it's probably a government official. Because I don't see why they would send someone like Jon Hamm to retrieve a tape of Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I was also thinking it was JFK at first. But now I'm guessing, it's probably it's either JFK or Robert Kennedy, but I wouldn't throw out Martin Luther King. But it's hard to know. I mean, I think it's intentionally left vague, like we're saying, because you're not really supposed to know, but it's kind of fun to speculate.
And then they burn, of course, the film, which I guess was supposed to be a absolution of your sins or some kind of statement on this really didn't matter all along. Was that an execution thing? Because I certainly got nothing from it. Was it just sort of like the priest forgiving this dead person or something? I mean, and if so, again, it just feels like another sort of limp part of the film. Same with the Dakota Johnson character, where it's just interesting enough, but where are you going with this?
I mean, with all the fire, it's implied that things literally go to hell. And so hell is known for sin, so they just let the sin, I guess, die. Wait,
is that what hell's known for? I'm just kidding.
Bad, yeah.
Wait, the word bad was in the title, so...
Yeah. Man, Pure Flicks gotta make good times at the El Royale. Where we all
El Royale's not dead. It's just been rebuilt. And I guess Royale...
It's like purgatory, man.
I don't know. It is the sort of film that invites discussion. I just worry that there's not much to be had. You know, if you dig
how far
too
can
much
that discussion
into,
go?
why is it called the El Royale? I guess just because. I mean, you really sort of have to stretch a bit.
I thought that was the nod to like the El Royale with cheese.
It might just be that. I was kind of being precocious, honestly, but I don't know. I guess it could be as simple as that. But why do you want to draw so much attention to the fact that your movie feels like cheap Tarantino? I guess maybe that's a little harsh, but I stand by my criticism that it just doesn't have the cleverness of the dialogue that Tarantino usually offers. So it just seems weird to me that Goddard wouldn't try harder to set this movie apart, I guess. What is special about this film that no one's done before? And that's where I really struggle to give it more praise. I struggle to give it a B over a B minus, honestly. And maybe there's something to that. I don't know.
Yeah. Is that it?
I think that's it. I got nothing else to add. We didn't talk about Nick Offerman much, but I did like that scene. I did think that it was a good way to open the film. Really set the tone.
I wish the trailer didn't spoil that he got shot.
Did it? I don't remember that.
Yeah, because I remember I remember exactly that shot because I kept waiting for him to get shot because I remember seeing that in the trailer. So I was like,
I must have not have seen that trailer. It couldn't have been the first one because I saw the first trailer.
It was the second trailer.
This is why watching second trailers is a bad idea because I got to be surprised by the shot. I didn't know it was coming, so I knew something bad was going to happen, but I didn't know when it was going to happen or what it was going to look like. So it was good for me.
I mean, maybe I don't remember seeking out the second trailer though, so maybe I saw it in a theater or something. So it's not like I tried. I remember only intentionally trying to see the first trailer. So, but yeah, I just remember seeing that shot before seeing the film, and I was bummed that they spoiled that, as well as the whole Jeff Bridges not being a priest thing. I was disappointed.
Yeah, why ruin that?
That is sort of given away. I think because in the marketing they wanted to really sell, I guess. They had to show the violence of the priest, and I guess at that point it's kind of obvious that he's not, but you're probably right. Maybe it would have been more effective if they had been a little bit more coy.
It would have been way cooler to go in and be like, what?
I still love that scene though, where Darlene Sweet is running out of the El Royale in that trailer, and like the
that's a great shot.
Coming up, it's such a in the trailer it's so effective, and here it's just as effective.
Yeah, they should have just had that. Bad Times the El Royale. She pulls the gun on Jeff Bridges. Done. That should have been the end of the trailer.
We should do trailers.
Yeah, I think actually I was thinking about it. I think I actually saw the Red Band trailer during Happy Time Murders. So
we were too distracted by
another thing that Happy Time Murders robbed from me is a crucial moment in Bad Times at the El Royale.
Happy Times at the El Royale, more likely.
Oh yeah, Happy Times, Bad Times. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
A lot of times. 2018 is the year of lots of films with boy in the title. Last year was the year of lots of films with wonder in the title. And I guess the second place goes to anything with word times. I don't know.
They are changing.
Well, I guess that'll about do it. Did you have anything to add, Maverick Himes?
Absolutely not.
Okay, well, let's call it. This has been a last call of Cinemaholics. Thank you for listening. If you ever want to hear any more last calls, become a patron. Check out our Patreon in the show notes, and we put out weekly content polls. If you ever have any requests, you can send them that way. and we want to watch more movies. Just tell us what to watch. And I'm glad, guys, we were able to do this and we were able to cover this film. I was really bummed we couldn't the other day, and it was good to sort of catch up and talk about this film for 50 minutes. I think it was.
Yeah, we should do more things like this. This was fun.
Let's say soft maybe.
Sure.
Just goofing. All right. Well, from the internet, California / Nevada, I guess. I'm John Agroni.
From the internet, Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
From the broadband basement, I'm Emma Rand.
See you next time.